So we're going to talk today. One of the things that we're going to talk about today is, I think a lot of us find ourselves in caregiving roles and a role that we may not have anticipated or expected, or maybe we did, but it always seems to happen sooner than we expect and look in a form different than what we might have anticipated.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're going to talk today about senior living just as a whole, right? And I think there's a lot of misnomers. I had a conversation with a friend today who is 64, and she said, I'm not ready to go to assisted living, but what do people like me do? Right? She's thinking she might want to downsize her house, and it's a lot of. She's like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of different ideas out there, and I can tell her outside the senior community itself, what those of us are doing. But what if it's now our parents, or it is us, and we realize we can't live at home anymore and we need to make a change, but I hear all these names thrown around. And what does that mean? What is senior living?
Yeah. 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 And it's confusing, right? First, it's intimidating because there are so many options with different names, the same name. One senior living environment or one senior service may have three different names. And so, unless you're out here living it, and again, I tip my hat to you, because instead of clamming up and running away, you've kind of dived right into it. And so you're learning all this, but most,
It's
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
beast.
well, it is a beast. It is a beast, and it's a beast because we think we know. We think we know.
And have
And
no
we're all
idea.
intelligent people out there. We all run lives and run businesses and raise children and do all these things, and then all of a sudden there is this beast that seems to have been hidden for so long and nobody talks about. We drive past them, but
Absolutely.
nobody wants to talk about what's inside. And so that's what I'm trying to do today is dispel some of the myths, some of the inaccuracies, and just kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and what is what.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just a little background, I get a lot of referrals from physician offices. So it's not just your everyday daughter Judy. It's professional health. I had no clue until I experienced this challenge with my own father. So it's not just people, oh, we're not in the medical industry. A lot of people are confused about what the different services are and what they mean, and at what stage in life do I lean into which resource. So I'm really happy to be able to have this conversation with you.
Well, then let's start at the beginning. I mean, so now let's just talk about our basic, the senior living. We drive past in every suburb, down every main road. You can cross 3 to 5 or more that say whatever senior living, independent living, assisted living. What
Yeah.
does all that mean? Break that down a little bit.
Sure, sure. So, kind of, like what you said, let's start at the beginning. You've got your active adult communities, right? And those are really just smaller houses. You think about parts of your Robson Ranch, your Del Webb, where they're smaller houses, but these seniors normally are still driving. They're getting out walking. It's more of a companionship environment, right? It's like kids are grown, grandkids, I don't need space for the grandkids. I don't want to deal with all the upkeep, and I want my tribe. I want my tribe. So that's your active adult community. Then just slightly, and there's very little difference. I would say the number one difference that I see in that and the standard independent living is the licensing, but independent livings tend to go straight up, right? Those are like those high rise. They're more in an apartment
Okay.
versus a little small one-story home. Independent livings, the difference between those and the active adult communities is independent livings tend to have the dining area. So they have a staff there, right? When you're in the active community, there's really no staff, but these independent living facilities actually have staff. They're going to be there cooking, they probably do your housekeeping. They don't have any healthcare staff, if you will. So
Right.
there's nobody to make sure you took your medications or make sure you eat. And
Right.
so a lot of times what I see is people go into the independent living and their adult children are out of town and nobody notices when they're not independent and they shouldn't be there. So we get a lot of seniors coming in that haven't eaten because they walk down, they sit there. It's not really mealtime, but they're maybe going into early stages of dementia and they don't realize that. And so now at an independent living, you are definitely independent.
Yeah. So I think that is really important. Like you said, there may be some basic help. Like you said, the meals are there and available, but nobody's checking that you're there Monday, Monday through Friday, 3 meals a day. They may clean come in and do a light dusting and a mopping of the floors. But that's about it.
Yep.
And I will say there is a statistic, and a lot of people don't realize this, that 1 in 2 seniors are at risk for malnutrition.
Yeah.
1 in 2 seniors.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so this is why, like you said, independent living is one thing, but there's nobody there that's going to call and say, Robin, we think your mom may need more attention than she's getting here.
Absolutely.
So it's important to know that is what the environment's going to be. If your parents or yourself are moving into something like that, really understand that it's not medical.
That someone should be laying eyes on them, right? And so
Yeah.
there are care managers out there that's their job. They go in and do wellness checks. Our organization, on our website, you'll notice we have in-home safety assessments. That's where we go out. And so maybe your mom is in an independent living and you're out of town, you're nobody's checking. We go in, is she taking her medications? That's when we find these pill containers that nobody's taking a pill from, or we find that things are starting to get a little bit out of order. It's not her norm. And so I encourage you, if your parents are or your loved ones are in this facility, make sure someone's checking on them regularly, at least monthly.
And tell me what that service is called again?
Sure, those are care managers.
Care
Care
managers.
managers. Hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Mostly RNs or nurses. And they have a certification in case management or care management, where what they
Okay.
do is they do those checks. In addition to those checks, they help you say, okay, now it's time for a level up. Let me help look for a good assisted living or a good transition. So they're really good for that. Yeah.
And then it's also not coming from you, the adult child, telling mom or dad what to do.
Exactly, which is huge. Which is huge.
Yes, yes. It's not
Which
me
is
being bossy.
exactly. I
The
see
nurse
so
said.
much resistance, and I often tell caregivers a lot of time before we get to that real big medical transition, daughters and sons and even spouses like to hold a lot of that control. And I always
Yeah,
tell them, this is your time to exit before they start losing their memory and become very defensive. Okay.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
go ahead and move a professional in, and you get to be the daughter, the son, and stay in your role.
That is the greatest thing, and you told me this when you went through this with your father, is that you want people to be the son or daughter, child, whatever that role is, not the primary caregiver, because that's work. It's
It is.
work.
It is.
And you lose some of that the relationship changes. and
It
and I
does.
was there, and that relationship changes a little bit when all of a sudden you're having to do things that I don't want to do with my mom.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean,
And you see a lot of resentment. There
mhm,
is definitely a the respect diminishes because the roles shift,
yeah,
right? Right? And a lot of times I see daughters and sons specifically become very resentful because they don't understand the
yeah,
changes that
yeah,
mom or dad are going through. And so from their eyes, she's being god awful to me and all I want to do is help her.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So we have independent living where people they are still making all their own decisions. They are living independently, but there is somebody in the building and meals are provided.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so what's next? So what's next in the I don't know what to call it, the journey of assisted
For
living?
sure, for sure. So then we've got two things that may happen. The number one thing, and it really, this is where budget becomes budget and the longevity. How long can this money last? So at this stage, most people either A, hire a personal care agency. It's also called home care. This is completely different from home health. Some people hire a personal care agency, a home care agency, to come in and start looking after mom in the independent environment. Okay, so this is when a non licensed person that's not a nurse, more of a caretaker or companion, comes into the independent living facility or even into your personal home to now start providing some medication reminders, helping with showers, taking her to appointments, things like that. More expensive. It's normally anywhere. Home care right now, I think, is fluctuating right between $30 and $40 an hour. So you can see where that can get expensive as we start needing 24-hour care.
And
Uh,
what I found is they have some minimums in there.
oh, 4 hours. Yeah, four
So, you
hours is
know, so
normal.
you can't say, can you come in for an hour in the morning and help her out and an hour in the evening and help her out? No, they
Yeah.
want 4 hour minimums. And so now at $40 an hour,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
$160 for
Hmm.
just 4 hours.
Minimum.
Yeah, minimum.
That's just the minimum. And the thing with home care is it's not covered by insurance. Long-term care insurance will help pay for it, but it's not a Medicare benefit. Medicaid will cover this. The problem is the reimbursement rate is so low. Most agencies, I can count on one hand the number of agencies that I know of that accepts the Medicaid. And we all know right now keeping caregivers is hard. Agencies
Uh-huh.
just can't afford to pay caregivers under the Medicaid benefit. And so this is all out of pocket that you're looking at.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that again is home health. There's no medical
That's home
anything going on
care.
with this. I mean,
Now that
you're
one's
right,
home
home
care.
care. I got
Yes,
it backwards. See?
yes.
See, I even know what I'm trying to say and I say it backwards. Okay, so
Everyone
home
does it.
care is non-medical.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now, what most people do at this stage is transition to assisted living. So, assisted living is still non-medical, but this is similar to the independent living facility, except there is some assistance, right? And so they tend to have CNAs or caregivers on staff, kind of a notch up. So, normal assisted living facilities are going to require a that your mom or dad is able to evacuate in case of a fire. So they need to be up, able to get around. They're not at risk for wandering. And so this is different from a memory care because they don't need to be in a locked building, right? And the state specifies some other things. They don't have wounds. They don't have high acuity needs like G tubes, things like that, because this is non medical. Most of them do not employ nurses. And so it's unlicensed assistive personnel. And this is where a lot of people go to kind of start that long term process. So someone's going to make sure you take your medications. Someone's going to be there 24/7. Now, you have two types of assisted living facilities. One is your type A. Okay. Type A is normally the people that are up, walking. They are more independent living facility, in fact. And then your type B. Your type B is where someone is awake all night. And again, they're administering medications, require a little bit more assistance, but they're not bedbound. They're not at risk for wandering, and they don't require high level of memory care needs.
Okay.
Assisted living in Texas, we used to say the average was around 4,500, but I know up in DFW now our average is more around 6,000 right now.
When we were looking, you couldn't walk through the door for less than $5,000.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
that was walking through the door. That did not include if how many medications do we, and we're going to dispense them all because I don't, because now we're ultimately have some responsibility. So now it's going to cost an extra 100, 200, $300 a month so that we can manage all medications. So now you're at, 5,300 a month. And then if they need, help getting out of bed, then that's, and so before you're done, you're at 8 grand a month.
Yeah,
And
I
that's fine. I mean, it's fine. I'm not, I just want people to understand what these levels of care, and this is in DFW, it's going to vary where you are, but that's probably for a metro area, I would say that that's probably rather
yeah,
pretty much standard.
yeah. Two things to be aware of with assisted living is a that yes, normally that's your entry rate is normally your base rate. And I mean, let's face it, if we keep living, our needs are going to increase. And so that's where those levels of care, those increased rates, and this is not your cost of living increase. And so you're
Right.
still looking at your regular annual cost of living increases. That's one thing I like to make people aware of when we're looking at assisted living. But the other thing is that assisted living, Texas regulations say, again, in order to be an assisted living, your need level can't go beyond a certain point. And that's where assisted living can get tricky. Um, Sometimes when people become bedbound or their memory declines more, or I've seen people start to require assistance with feeding, things of that nature, the assisted living may have to now ask that person to move on to a higher level of care.
Yes. And
And
that's what I think a lot of people don't, I mean, that's one of the things I didn't understand,
yeah,
right? Because with, and I've talked on this show about my mom, that she lost her ability to walk. And so the fact that she could not bear weight prevented her from entering. I'm not going to tell you how many conference rooms I cried in during that time when I realized that this was not going to be an option.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, we live in a world, a medical world specifically, because again, everybody's figuring it out. Those conversations that it's like, why didn't anyone tell me this? Instead, you end up searching and trying to figure things out for months. And it's like, I know you guys knew the answer day one when we were in that conference room.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
it's just it's just overwhelming because when you're doing this, so often you're doing it in urgency. And
exactly.
that's why I want to put this out there today. So if you're 60 and you're nowhere near needing this, at least you know what it looks like.
Yeah,
And if your parents are 70 and 75 and they don't need this yet, and you know, we hope they never do.
yeah,
However, if and when that time shows up, I want everyone to understand what this difference is
yep,
because it is it is terrifying
yep, yep. There are
at the time.
so many things that, having gone through that with my father and dealing with other sons, daughters, spouses that experience this, there's so many discussions and conversations that can be had
Yeah.
before the need arises that take some of the pressure, some of the emergent decisions away, you know
Yeah.
and not only, do you want to go to an assisted living, or would you prefer a small residential care home? Simple things like, do you want to ever be on a breathing machine, a ventilator? What are your advanced? For me, it was I realized I didn't ask my dad his favorite color until he had Alzheimer's. Yeah, the simple things that I needed to know that to start making his arrangements. What?
Yeah. Yeah. And now you're going, well,
Huh?
I don't know if he likes blue or green.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to be buried or cremated? What's your password to your cell phone?
There you go. Hello, honey. All these questions.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned a small residential care home.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those because that was the answer for me.
Yes, yes, yes. So, small residential care homes very closely mimic assisted living facilities. And there are some assisted living facilities, more so in the Dallas area, that are assisted living facilities in regular residential homes. And so residential care homes simply means we purchased a house on a regular block. If I didn't tell you, you would not know that there were a couple little unrelated elderly people in there being taken care of.
That's right. You don't even see.
You don't even see
It's
it.
just like every other house on the street.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, being a residential care home owner, I always laugh at the neighbors, all the things that they were coming up with in their brain. And I'm thinking to myself, they don't know. Like, I'm going to make sure the yard is kept and everything because I don't want y'all to hate me.
Yeah.
So they're the best. We're the best neighbors you can have, literally.
Well, yeah, because it's old people that aren't ever going outside. They're not going to play
Yeah.
rock and roll music really loud, and
No
they're not going to
naked
have,
wheelchair races.
yeah. So tell me on the residential care home, what is, I mean, who can move into one?
Yeah, anybody.
Okay.
So here's the deal with residential care homes. Texas regulations say that you can have up to four unrelated people, well, three unrelated plus one related person in a house without, and it can be what's called an unlicensed assisted living. So you're
Okay.
unlicensed. And what that does is it takes away those restrictions. So in this home, you can be bedbound. You can have these higher acuity needs. And honestly, I think it's a great option. But when you're looking at residential care homes, because there are no restrictions and the state doesn't regulate it unless something goes wrong, unless there's a report. And so when someone makes, you can still make state complaints and the state will send the surveyors out. But when you're doing your research for residential care homes, it's really important that you understand their training and their supervision because nobody else has an interest in that. And I
Okay.
say that because, unlike the larger assisted living facilities, residential care homes can take someone with any level of needs, which is a little bit scary that the homes with less oversight can actually take on more responsibility.
So they could have somebody with full on dementia and that needs a different kind of care. I
Yeah.
mean, fact is, if you are full on all the way down the dementia road, you need a very different kind of care than if you're 85 and have some memory loss.
Yeah. Now, sometimes I will. This is what I've seen be effective. So, dementia is my. I love dementia. It's where I thrive and what I study. So it can go both ways because a smaller residential home, what I have seen with good training, good supervision, and oversight, is that the person that's exhibiting behavior. So I'll never forget Mr. Johnny. No residential care homes would accept him. No assisted living facilities would accept him. He was coming out of Mayhill Hospital, and you know who said, "Well, we can give it a try."
Pat, God bless you.
Ooh, let me tell you, I think I lived at Windsor House for 3 days. He just walked around and was looking for escapes. But because of my training, we were able to figure it out. And it was simple things, right? He related this traumatic story to his family. He had this story in his head that involved his wife and his daughters and his grandchildren. So whereas other communities were thinking they were the solution, call his wife, let his wife come over. We actually had to stop the family from visiting for 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
So
But
this,
because it was a smaller and you could just be there and watch him all day
yep,
and understand, you were able to kind of unravel
yep.
what was happening or what he was reacting to.
You've got space. Like it's a huge
Yeah.
difference from being having to take care of 30 or 40 people than it is
Yeah.
from taking care of 4 or 5 people. Huge difference.
Well,
Yeah.
if I'm now, I was fortunate because when this all came down, I already knew you,
Yeah.
right? I knew you, and I knew that it was going to be an amazing place for my mom, and
Thank you,
it's
Robin.
even more than I honestly. She is thriving better than I'm going to tell you this right now in front of all the world. She is thriving more so now than she was before all this stuff went down. She is
Wow.
thriving better. And I am forever grateful to you for that. So
Thank you.
I knew Pat, so I was able to access, right? I mean, I had access and I still didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
So, what about somebody that, maybe they're thinking they've heard of these residential care homes. They're going through the internet, they're finding one in their community. How do they know what they don't know?
Yeah, yeah. So, a couple of things. A, referrals. Whether it's through organizations like ours, where all we do is look into other companies' business to figure out who's the good ones, who aren't the good ones. Ask someone. And then once you start doing your research, one thing that I always recommend doing is asking for the family members' phone numbers. Most family members don't mind jumping on the phone with someone that's thinking about moving their mother in, saying they take great care of my mother. I made a good decision, or it's the worst decision that I ever made.
And they
So
will be honest. They will
they
be
will be
honest.
honest. They will be, and in my experience is when you take that load off of a family member and you truly provide a good atmosphere for their loved one, there is no amount of money. They always feel the need to show gratitude. So if that means answering the phone, even if I'm the worst person on the phone and I never return phone calls, I've noticed that those families are going to make an exception. They're going to answer that call. They're going to call you back, and because they're eager to show their gratitude for what that community has provided.
I think you're absolutely right. And I will say too, you see in every Facebook group on the planet, somebody will say, I need to move my mom into fill in the blank because they assume assisted living, memory care, name it. They're just kind of throwing out the generic names.
Yep.
Which ones do you like? Well, my mom is different than your mom, and it's been 4 years. So the environment, it's just there's too many variables to be able to say, well, my mom loved it, so your mom will too.
Exactly. Exactly. One thing that I find, and I think if it were me back in that position, there's a couple of things. I want to know what that intake process looks like. Does does someone show interest in my parent? And so there a couple of things that you might see when you start doing this research. Sometimes you walk into a building and they start showing you all the fancy rooms and all the activities that when you look nobody's really participating in anyway. Okay, there's another option where they're going to sit down and they're going to ask you about your parent. What has their life experience been like? And this is them kind of learning. And if you tell me that your mom was honorary, has been honorary all her life and is very mean, and you're mad that you even have to step in, then I know that when your mom's having a difficult day, I may not want to go in the room and bounce your name off the wall at her. It may set me up for failure. So, how much interest do they show in the human versus all the other things? That's a telltale for me. How do they treat when you go on tours? How do they treat the staff and the other residents? Do they treat the other residents like there's a stranger walking around their home? Like when someone comes into our home, they get introduced not only to the staff so I can show off my care, but here are my residents by first name, and I'm going to pause and give this resident a chance to say hello back. And so you want to look at the human component of it. We are not, I tell my staff all the time, we do not sell real estate. We sell love and safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. It's true. So, so now we've gone through independent or active adult. We've talked about independent living. We've talked about some home care and some assisted living and residential care homes. What's next?
So then there are memory care. So
Okay.
in Texas specifically, and many states, honestly, assisted living facilities can get memory care certification. So it's literally still an assisted living, but so there are a couple of requirements, a couple of things structurally and training wise that sets a memory care outside or aside from assisted living. They have to be locked, right? And so that this is mostly for residents that wander. Have to be locked so the person can't get out, walk up the road. They have to have an enclosed outside area so that the person is able to go outside and still experience air, real earth, without running and escaping, right? They are required to have scheduled activities posted. And so in memory care, they're required to have. Now, here's the caveat. I would open my eyes to see if they're really engaging in those activities. Um,
You
other
say activities, what do you mean?
Yeah, so in memory care, because people with memory care tend to sit and become, they don't socialize much, the state requires that memory care facilities have an activity calendar for the full month. Here's what's available each day. Now, they don't require that the residents participate, but they do require that they have activities available. And it's,
Okay.
I think it's one activity per day or maybe four a week. I don't remember that regulation. The other thing is that they're required to have a certified dementia practitioner on staff. So there has to be someone on staff that before they are that person, they have to take it's about, I teach the course and I always say it's 8 hours, but it definitely ends up being about 10 hours. But it's a course that helps you understand what's going on in the person with dementia and Alzheimer's. And so though that's the difference between a memory care and the Alzheimer's unit. I'm sorry, and an assisted living facility. What I see a lot of as well is memory care facilities becoming more of the hospice facility, if you will. And so you see, we know that Alzheimer's disease is a terminal, non-reversible illness. And so a lot of times, once you're in a memory care facility, that's normally the final stop before you're heavily home. And so
Mm-hmm.
you see higher acuity. You definitely see people with higher level needs in a memory care.
Yeah, it's and the longer we live, the more we're learning about what is probably our natural progression.
Yep, you're
Right?
right.
I mean, I don't think that dementia is new. I just think for many, many years we didn't live long enough for our brains to change in
Absolutely.
that way. And
Absolutely.
so I think, when you talked about giving people training on understanding what's happening to the individual and why they're behaving the way they are, and because I told you I was fortunate enough to go see Teepa Snow,
Yes.
and she does an amazing job at explaining that
Yeah.
and putting you in the position of the individual and what they could be seeing and hearing and
Yes.
experiencing. And
Yes.
we as the other person just get mad at them because we don't know why they won't drink the milk. They always
Yep.
love the milk.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so it's a big deal. It's a big deal
Mhm.
that we understand why they may be getting combative,
Yes.
because
Yes.
I learned somebody becomes combative and then they can be asked to leave.
Oh yeah.
And then
Oh,
where are they going to get accepted? Because now they have an eviction, just like you got an eviction on your rental history.
yeah.
Now what happens when it's just it's a symptom of the disease and a lack of understanding in all of it, and it's tragic to me.
Robin, and that's a good point also, when you're out doing your research. Not only asking the facility at what level is too much, what are you able to handle, but also being very visual and looking around to see what levels are there. Do they look like they only accept people that are fully competent and able to care for themselves? Or do you see that they're staffed and trained to take care of higher? Because, like you said, the longer that we live, the more likely we are to have higher levels of needs. And the worst thing that we can do to someone that's at that declining point is take them and change their environment.
Well, that's it too, right? I think so. That kind of leads me almost to my next point is if we're looking at places for us or mom to live, mom or dad, and we don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And what about moving from location to location to locate? I mean, how do you plan for the future
Hmm.
when you
Hmm.
don't have any clue what that's going to look like?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question. I would say the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to mind, and what I love about our houses is, especially at Windsor, I would look, if I'm looking at a smaller community, especially, I would look for a community of people who are just about at the same level as my mom, because what's going to happen is those people are going to age together. That's very important in smaller environments, because what you don't want is someone that's running in circles and cooking and cleaning and wanting to go out with their friends and come back, and then someone who's nearing end of life and needs things to be real calm, needs a real calm energy. Um, a lot of people go with the more independent environments, a because my mind doesn't want to say that my mom is there yet, right? My mind wants to see the best. So a lot of people, and it's less expensive, right? Less care, less money. I So you see a lot of people starting independent and progressively move up. I honestly would recommend going with the level of care that will support the advancement if we don't have to move them. So maybe that's an assisted living facility that you see that they do take care of people with higher acuity, that your mom has room and space to decline as necessary. And look, they're used to it because I see other people here that have
Yeah.
gotten there, right?
So it's not a new thing for them. Like, oh my God, oh, we got, oh, Sue
Yeah.
is declining at this rate and nobody else is. And now that's an anomaly or something.
Yep. And a good thing to be aware of as well is, although assisted living facilities are not required to have locked door, a lot of assisted living facilities will have a way
Yeah.
to stop wandering. So find an assisted living facility that already has those mechanisms in place to support the aging process, right?
Yeah.
That's another good skill. Another good thing to look for. The worst thing that I would say, once you start seeing a decline, let's say you did start in an assisted living or you did start in an independent living, and you know that they're going to become too much, the earlier the better. Because once that decline, especially if it's a cognitive decline, starts to set in, moving them at that point is just about asking for behaviors. And as we know, they start presenting with behaviors. Now we're going to the mental hospital. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and now we're
It's
overly
just,
sedated. So, ask them, how do you all handle behaviors? One key thing now, and it's a buzzword in Texas especially, is, do you have RN delegation?
okay.
So, RN delegation allows communities to care for individuals that may have higher need levels without moving them to the higher environment. So,
Okay.
the staff is able to care for those needs under the training and leadership of that registered nurse that supports that community.
Okay. So this is a registered nurse who is kind of assigned this community and that community and that community. And so they make regular visits. They can be called upon if a problem arises or a question. You've got an RN right there that is trained and available
Yeah. Yeah.
to manage whatever that situation may be.
Yeah, and not only give instructions to the staff, but we do a lot of delegation, and one of the huge benefits is we're able to see outside the box, right? We're able to see, okay, let's say an assisted living facility gets a new referral, and we're looking at the clinicals. Well, now you have a clinical eye looking at clinical paperwork, and we can say, well, based on their history, this is what we're probably looking at in the next 5 years. What is the plan? What are we prepared to take care of this person? Are they going to have to move? This is what the move is going to cause them to experience. Have we expressed that to the family? So communities that partner with registered nurses under delegation, I really like that model. It shows that the community really cares about its residents
Yeah.
and about its caregivers, and not so much about the bottom line.
I I love, I just like that you're throwing out some of these terms so that people can pause this, go back and listen to it again and write these things down. Because again, not everybody listening to this is going to need this information today.
Mm-hmm.
Um and yet they are probably going to need it in the future in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I just want people to have heard of it before,
Yeah.
and so that they know what questions to ask, what to look for when you're looking at a place or a location or what might be best for you or your loved ones. Knowing the words and the terminology, I think, is really
It is.
really important.
It really is. It really is.
Now we talked about home care, and then you corrected me when I called it home health. So
Yeah.
let's go say, what is home health?
All right, so home health is a Medicare, a service that's covered by Medicare. There has to be proof of need. So a lot of times you see home care come into place. Maybe someone went to the hospital, and and it's not only Medicare. Commercial insurance covers home health as well. But there's a nurse involved. There's a physician overseeing orders, therapy. Home health used to be very therapy intensive. And so physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. Home health is normally for short terms, right? And so the goal with home health is to extend a curative process. So again, maybe you went in the hospital, you broke your hip, home health is coming out, make sure your medications are getting regulated, make sure you're getting some therapy for that hip so that you can become independent again. It is not to go on forever. Medicare and insurance is very, very specific about it. You've had some experience with home
Don't
health.
get me. We're not going to get on that particular soapbox today.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
So hard. So hard.
Home health requires that a person is homebound, so you can't be out driving and going shopping and things like that. There is an extension of home health, which is outpatient therapy. Very, very hard to find right now, as we are still in the COVID staffing crisis, which I'm not going to even go there. Um, but there's something called outpatient therapy, where therapists still come to you. You've outlived or out you've absorbed all of your home health benefit, and so now but you still can benefit from therapy, and the documentation shows that you can still benefit from therapy. That's outpatient therapy, where they still are coming to you. You're not having a nurse per se. It's all on mobility issues.
So it could be like a physical therapist coming twice a week or whatever that might look like.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, the last thing we haven't talked about, and that's just hospice.
Yeah.
What is hospice? Because I know people think hospice means you're going to die tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's what they think. And that's not true because people can be on hospice for years.
Oh my gosh, I'll never forget. So I was completely opposed to hospice. In fact, when my dad first fell sick, I lost a, well, thank God she showed me grace, but I fired a close friend for suggesting hospice to me. I hung up on her face. I'll never forget. In her face, I'll never forget. I was so mad. So in the old days, hospice was, that meant we're headed. We're done.
Yeah.
We're at the end. That's all. Hospice, first off, is a Medicare benefit. So there's palliative care and there's hospice, right?
Okay.
Palliative care is anything that is treating a symptom. So if I have a headache, I'm not running to get an MRI. Instead, I take a Tylenol. Guess what? That's palliative care. Okay.
Okay.
Hospice is a Medicare benefit, and there are a couple of requirements. You have to have a terminal illness that, if it took its anticipated route path, you could die within 6 months. A physician has to document stating that. There are a couple of disease processes that just that disease says, if this disease takes the anticipated path, the trajectory is that it can kill this person within 6 months. Heart failure, COPD, Alzheimer's are three of the top. With hospice, I love the hospice benefit, and one of my biggest regrets is not calling hospice in for my dad soon enough. Hospice provides a nurse minimum one time a week. When you really start getting in that last stretch, daily. I've seen people with,
24 hours.
yeah. You have an aide, so someone's coming by to help with bathing. And some people say, well, my mom's in an assisted living. I'm already paying for someone to help her with. That's another set of eyes coming in there, helping the staff, relating to the staff, seeing your loved one, providing more care and time that's focused on your loved one. A chaplain comes by about monthly or more, depending on the care plan. A social worker. So a lot of people, as they're concerned about paying for some of these aging expenses, Hospice actually provides a social worker to help navigate all that. I mean, it medications. So people used to think, oh, they're on hospice now. They come in with the morphine. That is not hospice. So any medications that are related to the terminal illness, hospice actually pays for, right? So let's say I'm on heart failure and I have to take a diuretic, I have to take Lasix. Hospice is going to pay for it. Not only are they going to pay for those medications are delivered.
Yes.
Not
And they
only
will come and make sure that they are in the
the pill planners,
organizer.
organizers,
They will take care of all of that.
they are supplies, depends, wipes, equipment, wheelchairs, beds, tables. Just it's such a holistic benefit that I feel that so many people miss out on because they're afraid.
Yeah.
It's no longer that you have to be taking these sedative medications or that, hospice is paid by the day. So it behooves them for your parent or your loved one to stay alive.
It is in their best interest to
It's been
keep
their
someone
best interest.
alive as long as
Exactly.
possible.
Exactly, exactly. The nursing support 24/7. I know for my homes, I love I try to keep hospice involved whenever I start to see that. And for me, it's not necessarily is someone nearing death or are they declining like that. My eyes are more like when will they qualify? I'm looking for because it's a benefit,
Opportunity.
an
Yeah,
opportunity.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that on-call nurse support and being able to say, I need a nurse to come out and lay eyes on this person. I need some, even me with my nursing background, I recognize that I take on a daughter's role with my residents, and sometimes I'm in denial. Sometimes I'm not seeing what's going on. Being able to call those nurses out and them talk to their physicians and just have that extra set of eyes on us, it gives me such a peace of mind.
Well, it is, and and I think back to my father, and his cancer was we were getting to the end, and my stepmom forgot to call help, right, until the next morning, and my dad was going through a lot of anxiety, and she was up with him, and it was just this night of kind of turmoil for both of them. It was the middle of the night, and I said, I'm not blaming you, but why didn't you call hospice?
Yeah,
Robin, I didn't even think about that. It didn't even occur to her that she goes, you're right. I should have picked up the phone and said, I need somebody to come over and help me. If
absolutely.
only so she could sleep for 3 hours.
If only for, yes, ma'am. Yes,
And
ma'am.
so I think, we hear, I think the word hospice, and you've taught me this. I mean, the word hospice has gotten such a bad name. It's just it's not what people think it is.
It's not.
And it's there to help get through some of these things that where illness is so extreme and that care gets elevated and it's needed because there's so many things that are going on
Exactly.
that we need help being the caregiver,
Absolutely.
and it's okay. And it's
Yeah.
okay to
Yeah.
get that help.
Absolutely. My rule of thumb is once we reach a place where we know we're not participating in all the curative things, right? When we know that we are over the extreme diagnostic tests, when we know that we are over the extreme therapy, that like here's what it is, and at this point, it's quality and not quantity. That's a hospice mindset. I tell people all the time when I'm talking, that's a hospice mindset. That's what hospice is about. It is focused on quality of life as opposed to quantity. And what people don't realize is as a nurse, if I go in and I assess a person and I see something surrounding their condition that is outside of normal limits, I am required to seek interventions. I am required to teach them on how to improve it, encourage them, report it to a doctor, come up with a plan to help the curative plan, right? Whereas hospice, I'm not required to do that. So hospice still does antibiotics, chest x-rays, all the things. Don't get me wrong. You can still go to the hospital. But when that person says, I don't want to, I'm no longer required to flex that part of my nursing license. When that person says, I don't want an IV. I don't want a tube feed. I don't want something put in I don't want to do that. I, as a nurse, from a hospice perspective, am able to say, I hear you and I support you. And we already have things in place where we know that you get to make those choices now.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh, this was so much. This was so much. So Pat, tell everybody how they can access information. You talked about your website. Tell people how they can go find some of this information when they need it and when
Yeah.
they don't need it.
Apps before they need it,
before
right?
before you need it.
Before they need it. I think the easiest thing to do is just jump on our website, which is wa1h.org, wa the number one h.org. On the website, there's a tab that says resources. One of the resources is life planning guide. Another is in-home safety assessments, I think. Click on one of those or just drop your email in, and one of us will reach out and kind of see where you're at. Man, the life planning tool is so robust. Like, we literally spend almost a full day just figuring out where you are and what you have, and then putting together a plan that fills all the missing gaps, all the missing pieces that you might have in that, to say,
Amazing.
okay, you may need this one day, or yeah, it's really amazing. But start there. It also gives you an opportunity to be in touch with one of our amazing board members or committee members that can help answer any questions. Although we have care homes, we refer to assisted living facilities, care homes, hospices, home health, any resource that might be of use to you. Our mission is to be able to provide those resources to you.
Well, you know I'm like your biggest fan. So I don't need to say that anymore. Otherwise it looks like I'm just gushing. But I just, you are so knowledgeable and I appreciate you sharing just in a very matter of fact way what all the options are out there, because it's so many people just assume when I can't live here, I'm going to assisted living.
Yeah,
And that may or may not be the case.
that's
And I just, again, learning before you need something is
man.
vital. So I would say go to the number one H. That's for We Are One Heart Foundation, by the way. .org
Yes.
and maximize those resources. Pat has so much knowledge. She has been in this. She's gone through a lot of things with her own father. And I've seen her react, how she loves old people. I'm not gonna lie. I think, you know. So I'm just gonna say I have had the honor of being around her, and I have been had the honor of crying on her shoulder and all those things. And so she is an expert in this field. She will share what she knows. So please, 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 please utilize her wherever you can. And I think it'll make this process, as whether it's tomorrow or 10 years from now, it will make this process much, much easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Robin,
well, thank you, Pat.
thank you, Robin. Thank you for being a light for everyone. I always say we have a choice in how we allow life situations to affect us, and you've allowed your experience with your mother to light your light. And I love seeing you glow in this space, and I love all the things that you're doing. So as you are singing my accolades, just know that I'm singing yours as well.
Well, we are a good team, you and me. We are
Yes.
a good team.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. It's called Relax, I Got This, Embracing Life After 60. It's about taking control of your life and the things that you want as we move forward in this aging process. So please make sure you follow us and subscribe on any podcast channel, YouTube, all the things, and tune in next time for another episode of Relax, I Got This, Embracing Life After 60. Thanks so much. See, I think it's stopping. There we go. Ugh.